Welcome to the first Saturday in June. Let's hope you've started the month off with some feel-good vibes. Whether it's through reading a book, listening to music, dancing, hanging out with friends and family, or simply relaxing. Whatever you do, make it an enjoyable one. Hi there everyone, I'm Adrian Atkinson and welcome to our weekend edition of Jamaica Magazine. Coming up in today's show, preparing for what's expected to be an active hurricane season, plus how to balance your salt intake. This and more awaits you on the flip side of this break. From giving immediate aid to helping people rebuild their lives, emergency shelters play a vital role in our communities, especially in the time of crisis. Let's take a look at what you need to know if you or your loved ones should ever need an emergency shelter.
Always have to be a hurricane. A disaster can strike at any time, natural or man-made, and you may not be thinking about a shelter. But shelters are a critical part of the government's disaster plan to ensure the safety of citizens in the event of a natural or man-made catastrophe. Let's rewind a little. Do you know the nearest shelter in your community?
We use schools as shelters, community centers, churches. All of these are utilized for the purpose of assisting persons that would need accommodation in times of emergencies. And so that is the role of the shelter. In terms of the number of shelters that we have, it could be in the region over about 900 shelters that we have across Jamaica.
We always grab our phones when we're in trouble. And this time we are searching for the nearest emergency shelter on the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management ODPEM website. Select the Shelters tab, choose your parish, then download the listing to see all available shelters in or near your community. You can also browse the interactive map and click on the red dots to identify the shelters. ODPEM also updates its website with the new shelter listings once the annual inspections are completed.
The reason for this is because sometimes some schools can be removed from the listing, and so we would need to, of course, have that information properly and well communicated for persons to be able to know what to do when it is time to go to a shelter. Disaster shelters are activated in two ways. They're done nationally and they're done at the parish level, parish or community specific, for parish or community specific impacts. Now, large scale hurricanes, for example, when we have lead time, so sometimes when we're tracking these storms and we have lead time 2 or 3 days, then the shelter managers are activated, right, alerted through the parish mechanism. And so they are on standby to open the shelters. So informing the public, that is done through the formal mechanism of press releases that are sent to media houses to let, of course, persons know that shelters are activated and persons should, of course, go to their nearest shelter. The ODPEM also passes information about shelter activation through our various other social media handles, the Facebook and Twitter and all of the others. And of course, where communities are generally impacted all the time, these persons know their shelters, they know their shelter managers, and so, the information is kind of fluid.
Good afternoon. My name is Rosemary Livingston.
Good afternoon, Ms. Livingston. I'm Chevelle.
I'm here to tell you, Chevelle, the things you should take to the shelter and what you should not take.
Okay.
You can carry stuff like tin sardine, tin mackerel. You can have a little lemonade drink, oats, and your biscuit, and your lasco, and your wipe, your clothes. Make sure you come with your sanitary napkin.
Do I have to put the clothes in a plastic bag?
Yes, in case of there's rain, you have them in the plastic bags. You come with your medication. And if you have children, you carry the medication. So you plastic them. What you should not take to the shelter: no knife, no cigarettes, no pets, and no bad behavior.
Okay, that is it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
The COVID-19 pandemic shifted emergency shelter operations with an added focus on keeping persons safe from transmissible diseases. Shelter managers are trained to observe COVID-19 protocols, and this includes having an isolation area. The safety of every emergency shelter is paramount, and this means that shelter rules must be followed.
This government, since 2016, have made arrangements that once the shelters are occupied, we will provide food supplies for persons within the shelters. So the rules that are laid out are clear. It is written all over the board. You see it. Shelter rules.
Emergency shelters are also being retrofitted to provide better mobility for disabled persons. Shelter managers across all parishes are trained each year and provided with refresher trainings in an ongoing program. According to the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, IFRC, disaster preparedness isn't just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do.
Given our realities, some communities are vulnerable, and so the shelters would definitely not be in such a vulnerable location. And so where those cases exist, there is an arrangement at the municipal corporation level where the vulnerable population is actually transported to these shelters.
We are in a race against time to reverse the effects of climate change by one simple action, which has positive and enduring effects. That's right, plant a tree, leave a lasting legacy. Join the My Tree Legacy promotion by planting a tree at your alma mater and share your work with us. Every tree counts. Plant a tree today and keep climate change away.
From seasoning our meats to preserving food, salt plays a crucial role in our daily lives. Get ready for an enlightening journey into the salt depths as we explore the pros and cons of consuming too much or too little salt.
Most of us are very familiar with salt. The most common is table salt. The chemical name is sodium chloride, and it's a common component of the food supply in most countries. There are several other sources of salt, including monosodium glutamate, or MSG as it's commonly known, and sodium bicarbonate, or baking soda. Salt is commonly used to flavor food and is used as a binder, stabilizer, as well as preservative. Sodium, or salt as we know it, plays an important role in the proper functioning of our body, with just about 500 milligrams needed daily to carry out normal body functions, such as water balance and nerve conduction. However, most of us are consuming much more than is needed.
Global estimates suggest that persons consume between 9 to 12 grams of salt per day, which is 1.5 to 2 times the recommended intake level.
This briny affair is one of the key factors in our non-communicable disease burden. In simple terms, our overconsumption of this nutrient is contributing to the development of several diseases.
When we look at the heart and cardiovascular system, increased salt intake is associated with high blood pressure, with ischemic heart disease, with hypertensive heart disease, as well as heart failure. For the brain, it's associated with stroke, as well as dementia. For the kidneys, with chronic kidney disease and renal stones. For the stomach, there is an association with increased risk of stomach cancer. For the bones, there's problems related to osteoporosis.
High blood pressure or hypertension affects 1 in 3 Jamaicans, and another third is pre-hypertensive. Salt consumption is also often accompanied by increased intake of calories, which increases the propensity for obesity.
Given that the entire population is at risk of NCDs, given the significant impact and the burden of NCDs, it's imperative that there is sustained action to mitigate the effects of salt consumption.
In 2021, the Ministry of Health and Wellness launched the Jamaica Salt Consumption Knowledge, Attitudes and Practice Jamaica Salt CAP study. It was designed to provide local baseline data for strengthening strategies to eliminate overconsumption of salt within the population. The ministry is partnering with the National Non-Communicable Disease Committee, the National Health Fund, and the University of the West Indies on the study.
One important aspect of addressing the health concerns of any population is through research. This study, therefore, will help to determine the knowledge, attitude, and practices of our population as it relates to salt intake and strengthen the implementation of strategies to reduce.
This project has specific objectives. So firstly, we aim to estimate the dietary sodium consumption among Jamaicans using spot urine sodium analyses. We want to evaluate the salt content in commonly consumed packaged foods sold in supermarkets. We also want to evaluate the sodium content in commonly used consumed foods in local restaurants. Then we will conduct a national survey to get information on knowledge, attitudes, and practices regarding salt intake in Jamaica.
The World Health Organization, WHO, recommends less than 5 grams of sodium per day for adults and less than 2 grams for children under 11 years of age. 1 in 10 Jamaicans consume excess salt by adding it during cooking or at the table, as well as by frequent consumption of salty sauces or high-sodium processed foods. A significant amount of sodium also comes from ready-made meals and prepared foods, including processed meats, breakfast cereals, and snacks. It's a scenario where the entire population is at risk for NCDs. Minimizing this habit for excess salt in the diet of Jamaicans is one of several goals informing the Ministry of Health and Wellness's NCD agenda. The mission to shake the salt habit begins with the young. Lowering sodium in children's diets today can help prevent heart disease later in life, especially for those who are overweight. Limit their consumption of salty snacks. And remember, no more than 2 grams per day from all food sources for those under 11 years of age. Let's also shop and cook smart. Use less or no salt when cooking and add more flavor to your food by using fresh herbs and salt-free seasoning instead. Also, keep a watch on the foods that are high in salt and limit the consumption. Take the time to carefully read the nutrition labels on food products to determine those providing the healthier options, and be mindful of the portion size you consume. Also, seek out recipes for healthy, tasty meals that can be prepared with little or no salt.
Jamaica is a signatory to the United Nations International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, which recognizes the right of everyone to the highest standard of health. And we believe that in order to achieve this, we must address the crises of NCDs and the role that excess salt, sugars and fats play in making Jamaicans susceptible to getting a lifestyle disease.
Jamaica has committed to the World Health Organization voluntary target to reduce sodium or salt consumption by 30% by 2025. Achieving this requires buy-in from all stakeholders, including manufacturers, retailers, health professionals, and consumers.
So we have a duty to ensure that Jamaicans are aware of the harmful effects of unhealthy diets and have access to important nutritional information, which will allow them to make healthier food choices. It has to be tackled initially from the prevention perspective, and the core of that is consumer information, and then policies that encourage or nudges health-seeking behavior.
We all must do our part to break this briny affair, shake the salt habit, and stay healthy.
The Joint Select Committee of Parliament reviewing the Domestic Violence Act wants to hear from you. Review the Act and share your opinions with the committee. You can find a copy of the Act on the Parliament's website at www.japarliament.gov.jm under the heading Publications. Once you've reviewed the Act, submit your written opinions by Friday, June 14, 2024 to Clerk to the Houses, Gordon House, 81 Duke Street, Kingston, or email them at clark@japarliament.gov.jm. Let your voice be heard.
Thanks for staying with us on Jamaica Magazine. Now, don't be alarmed if you should hear that worms, yes, the ones that actually live inside your bodies, are a very common source of problem for both adults and children. But once treated, there's nothing for you to fear. Don't take my word for it. Let's hear from an expert.
Deworming is the process of giving worm medicine to an individual to get rid of parasites such as roundworm and tapeworm. While the focus is usually on children, adults should also be dewormed. Consultant pediatrician at the Bustamante Hospital for Children, Dr. Sandrika Young-Peart, tells us why this process is important, signs to look for, and the impact of these worms to our health.
When we talk about worms, we're talking about multiple different types. We may talk about the roundworm, the pinworm, or we can talk about the whipworm. And these are just some of the few worms that exist. The worms can actually cause a disease burden on our society, and the complications of having worm infestations are numerous and problematic. It affects how our children may concentrate and may be able to learn. There are actually documented findings that it actually affects your cognitive and your physical development and your ability to concentrate in school. And so it's actually important that we actually rid our children of these parasites. According to the WHO, approximately 800 million children are actually affected by worms each year. So what are some of the signs that a person may have worms? Symptoms could be what we commonly think about, like grinding of the teeth. They may be itching their anus, right? They may actually have weight loss. They may feel very tired and fatigued. And these are just some of the symptoms that may give you an indication that your child may have worm. They may not have any signs at all. Or they can have other signs and symptoms, such as vomiting, abdominal swelling or distension, diarrhea, or constipation. If the worms actually form balls, they can actually block the intestines, and that can either cause constipation and cause the child to vomit. They can also present with wheezing, and we may think they are actually asthmatics, but it's actually the worms that have migrated into the lungs to cause obstruction of the airway and cause the child to wheeze. So how do they get infected? They may get infected either by eating or drinking contaminated water or food. If there is inadequate or improper waste disposal, and if we don't wash our hands before we eat or drink food. And there's a particular worm that you can actually get if you actually walk barefooted. So that is also something to bear in mind. And so it's actually important that we actually give our children worm medicine so we can actually target getting rid of these worms and actually reducing the worm burden in our society. You can deworm your children twice per year. You should actually give them worm medicine, and all the persons who are in the household should also get the worm medicine at the same time. It is important that our adults also be treated or dewormed, because we can be asymptomatic, meaning that we don't have any symptoms at all, but we can still be carriers of worms. And when we excrete or pass our feces, especially sometimes when we do it inappropriately, we may pass out the eggs of these worms. Then our cows or poultry or pigs may actually ingest these when they feed. And then that's a vicious cycle. And should our children be playing in the areas where waste is inadequately disposed, then they too can actually pick up the eggs or the larvae on their fingers. And if they don't wash their hands before they eat, or while they're in the midst of playing, they may actually put their fingers in their mouth, then they too can actually ingest these worms. So how can you prevent your child from getting worms? It's difficult, but there are some basic tips that we can actually do to reduce the chance of our children getting these serious worm infections and having the complications. It's basic hand washing before eating our food, allowing our children not to walk barefooted, allowing our children not to play with the pets, especially if their pets are not treated quite frequently. And importantly, proper hygiene. Ensure that our waste is disposed properly. So it's pretty important that we all get on board as adults so we can actually reduce the worm burden and the impact on our society.
Bacteria we can't stop fight. Antibiotics, take them right. Antibiotics. Come let me tell you how to take them right. Only take them from professionals with medical credentials. Do not share them with friends or relations. Use prescriptions, follow instructions. Take them till them done with no interruptions. Bad bacteria we can't stop fight. Antibiotics, take them right.
Brought to you by the UWI Mona, Ministry of Health, National Health Fund, PAHO WHO.
From breaking stereotypes to planting and reaping success in the field, Elaine Sadler is a farmer on a mission to achieve it all. Let's walk with her through her journey as a food producer.
Women does everything, and farming is no different. Yes, it's a little bit hot and it's a little bit messy and you get your hands dirty and all of that, but you know, old time people said if you want good, your nose have to run.
These are the remarks of our female farmer, Elaine Sadler, a lady who recognizes that effort pays dividends and having family support makes the job easier.
I grew up seeing my parents doing this basically all their lives. They were farmers and shopkeepers, and so I think from an early stage that would have been in us.
Elaine decided to fulfill her destiny by starting a family-owned business in order to preserve her parents' legacy. Like most journeys, it started out with trials and errors.
When I just started here, I would have planted about 5 acres of cantaloupe and yellow squash at the time. And I remember we had trucks and trucks and truckloads of these produce, but we did not have market at the time. I was young in the business at the time, and maybe I did not do my research well to find the market before, and that was a major problem.
The farming road was a rugged one.
Farm roads is usually a problem for any farmer in Jamaica, I think, and we have been having this problem now for many years.
But Elaine is a lady with a strong will to see things through to completion.
We didn't allow that to deter us anyways. So as it is right now, I would not say I'm having major problems because I am supplying to my own business, and that is excellent.
With the intention of creating a family business, Elaine enlisted her brother's help in running the farm.
I could not again do it on my own. I manage 5 acres of this land here, owner and manager of 5 acres for myself, but we spoke about 15 to 20 acres and he's involved in that, the rest of it. So it's a family-owned business similarly to my restaurant.
First, I must say I have a very good sister, somebody who loves to incorporate family, and she was always looking out for us to have something that we are in charge of, and that's mainly it. My daily work is to see to it that everything goes as it's supposed to be. Scout the field so that we have proper sanitation for weeds, pests, fungicide, fungus, and for fertilization. I must see to that.
Being in the industry for about 20 years, Elaine has learned a thing or two about crop rotation.
Usually we have to rotate our crops as we are directed by RAD and those people who guide us and help us. It is not wise to plant the same thing over and over and over. And so we would have been doing several things here over time. I planted onions and it was beautiful. We had a wonderful crop, but we could not do that again. So most of this land that you see, we are now preparing them again to plant something different.
And to safeguard the yield.
You have to monitor the crops all the time to see if and when they need spraying, and we use all the recommended pesticides and herbicides, working with RADA and the experience of my team and manager here, so they know exactly what to use to get rid of fungus and pests.
Despite having a busy schedule, Elaine still finds time to help her neighborhood by utilizing her car to deliver the items to her neighbors while also making additional investments.
I think being able to just purchase the stuff that the people grow in this community is of great help, because we basically buy from the farmers in this community.
This begs the question, should women think about farming as a realistic career option?
Certainly, why not?
I would definitely encourage any young miss to do it.
Now is the time to really get into farming. I think it's a perfect time. And farming is not what it used to be back in the days when my parents used to be in the broiling sun all day in their boots with a little hat and sun and digging. Now we have tractors and stuff that does our plowing and all of that on the farm. So it makes it a little easier, and it makes it easier for women to manage a farm.
You too may become a part of the effort to develop a sustainable agriculture system just like Elaine did, whether it be in farming, food processing, distribution, or waste management. It's the call for Jamaicans to regenerate our productivity.
And that's it for our weekend edition of Jamaica Magazine. Be sure to join us again tomorrow on this same station for another informative edition. Remember to visit our website, jis.gov.jm, for this and other information. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Thank you so much for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.